I never meant for things to go this far. That was the first thought Captain Evan Cole had every morning on Outpost R-17, long before the sun cleared the jagged mountain line and the wind started scraping metal against metal across the facility walls. It was the kind of place the military called low priority, which was a polite way of saying forgotten until something goes wrong. R-17 sat on the edge of a dead valley system, surrounded by fractured rock formations and old impact craters from a war no one liked to talk about anymore. Officially, it was an ecological observation post. Unofficially, it was a dumping ground for anything too dangerous, too expensive, or too unpredictable to keep anywhere else. That included the Dragon. Designation, DR-7 Bioaerial Entity. Nickname, Smokey. Nobody on base knew who started calling it that. It just stuck. Maybe because of the way it exhaled faint gray vapor when it was calm. Or maybe because DR-7 sounded too much like something that should have been destroyed rather than contained. Smokey lived in a reinforced containment canyon half a kilometer from the main outpost. The canyon walls were layered with adaptive alloy plating, shock dampeners, and automated defense turrets that had never once been activated, but everyone liked knowing they were there. Evan had been assigned to monitor it. Observe, don't interact, the briefing officer had said. It's not a pet. It's not an asset. It's a classified organism under behavioral study. Evan had nodded like that made sense. It didn't. Because Smokey was intelligent. Not just instinct-driven. Not just reactive. It watched. It learned. It remembered. And that was the problem. The first time Evan saw it up close, it was perched on the far side of the canyon, wings folded tight like a cloak. Its scales weren't traditional, more like overlapping plates of dark carbon sheen that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Its eyes tracked him with slow, deliberate focus. Not predator focus. Curious focus. That was the moment Evan should have requested reassignment. Instead, he waved. Smokey blinked. And tilted its head. That tiny reaction changed everything. The second mistake came 3 days later during routine supply inspection. A drone had malfunctioned and dropped a crate of tools near the canyon fence. Evan went to retrieve it manually, because bureaucracy had already delayed replacements twice that month. Smokey watched him the entire time. Silent. Still. Calculating. Evan noticed it staring and, without thinking, lifted a wrench from the crate and tossed it lightly toward the canyon edge. Hey, he called out casually, half joking, half just trying to break the tension of being observed by a living weapon. Fetch. It was stupid. It was harmless. It was a joke meant for no one. Smokey didn't move immediately. It stared at the wrench lying on the rock like it was analyzing a problem it hadn't been given before. Then, slowly, it exhaled. And moved. Not aggressively. Not erratically. Purposefully. It stepped forward, wings shifting slightly for balance, and picked up the wrench between its teeth with surgical precision. Then it returned to its perch and placed it neatly at Evan's feet. Evan laughed. Just a short, surprised laugh. Well, okay then. Private Logan Pierce, standing nearby on perimeter duty, didn't laugh. That thing just understood you, Logan said. Evan shrugged. Or it's mimicking behavior. Parrots do similar. Smokey tilted its head again. As if listening. As if judging the comparison. And Evan, against every rational instinct he had ever been trained with, did it again. He pointed at a discarded maintenance drone half buried in the canyon sand. Go get that. The silence that followed felt heavier than the canyon walls. Logan straightened immediately. Sir. I don't think. Smokey moved before he finished. Not fast. Not chaotic. But certain. It unfolded its wings in a single smooth motion, launching into the air with a pressure wave that rattled the fence line and kicked dust into a spiraling storm. Evan instinctively raised an arm to shield his face. For a moment, everything was quiet except the wind. Then Smokey was gone beyond the ridge. Logan stared at Evan. You just gave it a command. It's a suggestion, Evan said, though his voice didn't sound confident anymore. That's not a suggestion voice. Hours passed. The sun shifted. The canyon grew colder. And Smokey did not return. At first, Evan assumed it had lost interest. Or maybe the drone had been too damaged. Or maybe the whole interaction had simply been coincidence dressed up as intelligence. Then the horizon changed. A distant shape appeared over the ridge line. Logan saw it first. Sir. Evan turned. At first it looked like dust in the sky. Then it looked like movement. Then it looked like something far too large to be airborne without authorization. Logan's voice dropped. That's not one of ours. Evan narrowed his eyes. And then the shape resolved. Something was flying back toward them, carrying something underneath it. Something heavy. Something metallic. Something that didn't belong anywhere near a restricted ecological containment zone. Smokey was returning. And it had followed the command. Evan's mouth went dry as the object became clearer with every second. Because it wasn't just a drone. It wasn't scrap. It wasn't debris. It was military hardware. Real. Operational. Powered. And still active. Logan whispered the words no one wanted to say out loud. That's a vehicle. Evan stepped forward instinctively, heart pounding now for a reason he didn't yet understand. No, he said quietly. That's impossible. Smokey descended through the sky like a falling shadow. And whatever it was carrying was about to land directly in front of them. The first alarm wasn't the base systems. It was Logan Pierce's voice. Sir? Captain Evan Cole didn't answer immediately. He was still staring at the sky where Smokey had vanished minutes ago, trying to convince himself he had misjudged distance, mass, or even reality itself. The desert wind rolled through Outpost R-17 like it didn't care what humans believed was possible. Then Logan spoke again, sharper this time. Sir, you need to look at this. Evan turned. And that was when the second alarm began, this one from the perimeter sensors. A rising tone. Then a sharper escalation. Then full breach warning. But the system didn't know what to classify. Neither did Evan. Because what was coming over the ridge line wasn't a drone anymore. It was too large. At first, it looked like a dark speck cutting across the sky. Then it grew, rapidly, until it distorted the horizon itself. The air seemed to ripple around it, like the atmosphere was resisting whatever was forcing its way through it. Logan's voice dropped into something almost uncertain. That's not one of ours. Evan didn't respond. He couldn't. Smokey reappeared over the ridge seconds later. And it was carrying something. Not gently. Not casually. But deliberately. The dragon's wings beat in a steady rhythm, each motion controlled, precise, as though it understood exactly how much force was required to keep its burden stable in the air. Dust trails followed it like smoke, curling behind its silhouette. And beneath it, Evan saw metal. Not scraps. Not debris. A vehicle. The realization hit a fraction of a second before Logan said it out loud. That's a transport unit. Evan stepped forward unconsciously. No. That's impossible. Smokey descended. Slowly. Carefully. As if it had done this before. As if it had expectations to meet. The ground trembled when it landed inside the canyon perimeter. A shockwave of displaced air rolled outward, rattling fencing panels and making the base floodlights flicker. Dust erupted in a circular plume around its feet. When the dust settled, the object became fully visible. It was a military-grade transport carrier. Armored plating. Reinforced suspension. External maglock clamps still engaged. Its engine housing was intact, humming faintly with residual power. And it was not from any known inventory assigned to R-17. Logan had already drawn his sidearm without realizing it. Sir, that's Earth military hardware. Evan crouched slightly, studying it. We don't have Earth hardware on this continent. That's what I said. Smokey lowered its head and gently nudged the transport forward. The movement was almost proud. Like a trained animal presenting a gift. Evan swallowed. Where did it get this? Logan shook his head quickly. There's no way it flew that far. No way it lifted something that heavy. That thing weighs. He stopped mid-sentence. Because the transport wasn't alone. Behind it, still partially suspended in Smokey's grip, was something worse. Something heavier. Something armored. A second object dropped into view as Smokey adjusted its hold. The canyon floor shook again. A tank. Fully intact. Operational. Its turret rotated slowly the moment it touched ground. And pointed directly at Evan. Silence spread through the outpost like a physical force. Logan raised his weapon instantly. Target acquired. Wait, Evan snapped. But it was too late. The tank systems flickered. A low mechanical hum filled the canyon. Then a voice crackled through an external speaker system. Unknown Dragon-class entity confirmed. Static. Then clearer. Initiating recovery protocol. Evan felt the blood drain from his face. That's not ours, Logan whispered again, but this time it sounded like fear instead of observation. Smokey tilted its head. The tank's turret adjusted slightly. Locking. Not on Smokey. On the base. On them. Evan stepped between them instinctively. Smokey, back. The dragon paused. Not startled. Not confused. Just evaluating. Then it exhaled. A low, vibrating sound that rolled through the canyon like distant thunder. The tank's targeting systems flickered again, as if struggling to maintain lock. Logan looked at Evan. It understands you. I don't think it understands anything, Evan said. I think it's reacting. Smokey moved. Fast this time. Not toward Evan. Not toward the tank. But around it. Its wings snapped open, pushing a controlled blast of air that forced the tank to shift slightly in the dirt. Not enough to overturn it, but enough to disrupt its aim. The turret recentered immediately. But now it was no longer steady. It was searching. Evan realized something then. This isn't a delivery, he said quietly. Logan glanced at him. What? Evan didn't take his eyes off the tank. It didn't bring this back randomly. The canyon sensors began to scream again. A new signal. Then another. Then several. Logan's eyes widened. Sir, we've got incoming. Evan looked up. Far beyond the ridge line, silhouettes were forming in the sky. Fast-moving. Coordinated. Structured. Not wildlife. Not drones. Not anything local. Smokey stepped forward again. Between Evan. Between the tank. Between the incoming signals. And for the first time since its arrival at R-17, it didn't look curious anymore. It looked aware. Like it had just realized the game it was playing, had rules someone else had already written. The first thing Evan Cole noticed was the silence. Not the natural kind, wind across rock, distant metal creaking in heat, but the unnatural kind that happens when systems begin to realize they are outmatched. Outpost R-17's perimeter sensors had stopped their usual cycling chatter. Even the alarm tones had shifted into something lower, more uncertain, like the base itself wasn't confident it was allowed to keep speaking. Captain Evans stood in the canyon with his boots half sunk in disturbed dust, staring at the transport and the tank like they had been dropped from a different war entirely. Private Logan Pierce had not lowered his weapon. Sir, Logan said quietly, this is escalating past protocol fast. Evan didn't answer. He was focused on the tank. It wasn't idle anymore. Its turret was moving in slow, controlled increments, scanning the canyon walls. Not searching randomly, mapping. Learning geometry. Building threat profiles. That was the part that made Evan's stomach tighten. Machines didn't do that here. Not like this. Behind it, Smokey stood perfectly still. The dragon's wings were half-folded, not in rest, but in readiness. Its head was angled slightly toward the tank, as if it was watching something familiar trying to pretend it wasn't. Then the transport carrier shifted. A faint mechanical whine rose from its underside. Logan snapped his attention toward it immediately. It's powering up again. Evan stepped closer, squinting at the markings along its hull. They weren't local. They weren't even allied. They were Earth military classification codes. Old ones. Pre-war. He felt a cold realization forming before he could stop it. This shouldn't be here, Evan said quietly. Logan glanced at him. You keep saying that, sir. I mean it literally, Evan said. This is Earth hardware. That got Logan's full attention. Of? As in? Human origin. Not colony. Not off-world. Old Earth production lines. Logan shook his head slightly. We're 3 planetary systems removed from Earth-controlled space. I know. Silence followed that. Then the tank speaker crackled again. Recovery protocol active. The words were the same, but now there was structure behind them. Confidence. Authority. Like something had confirmed a classification match. Smokey moved a step forward. The tank's turret instantly snapped toward it. But it didn't fire. It hesitated. That hesitation was worse than aggression. Because it meant recognition. Evan raised his voice. Smokey, stay. The dragon paused mid-step. Logan looked at him sharply. You're still giving it commands? I'm trying to stabilize it, Evan said. By talking to it. It listened before. That was before it brought back a war machine. Smokey tilted its head slightly at Evan's voice. Then it did something neither of them expected. It looked at the tank. And responded. Not with sound. Not with motion. But with a low-frequency vibration that rolled through the canyon floor. The air itself seemed to compress slightly, like pressure changing before a storm. The tank systems flickered. Its turret slowed. Evan stared. It's interfering with the targeting system. Logan's voice dropped. That's not interference. That's override-level disruption. The transport carrier suddenly emitted a sharp mechanical tone. A scanning beam activated from its underside, sweeping across Smokey in a tight, controlled arc. Smokey did not move. But the canyon sensor screamed again. Identity match in progress, the transport system announced. Evan froze. What does that mean? Logan demanded. The tank responded before anyone else could. Entity classification confirmed. A pause. Then. Dragon Unit Variant 07. Evan felt something inside his chest go tight. That's its designation, he said quietly. Logan looked at him. You knew that? I knew the label, Evan corrected. Not this behavior. The transport continued. Recovery asset designated. Priority status, extreme. Smokey growled. Low. Deep. Not loud, but resonant enough to make loose gravel tremble. The tank rotated again, slower now, almost uncertain. Evan realized something critical in that moment. They think it's theirs, he said. Logan blinked. What? The machines, Evan said. They think Smokey belongs to them. That's insane. I know, Evan said. But they're reacting like it escaped containment. Smokey stepped forward again. The tank immediately adjusted aim. But still did not fire. Instead, its system sent another signal. Containment breach classified event detected. The canyon lights flickered violently. And then, far above them, the sky itself changed. A second signal appeared on radar. Then a third. Then several more. Logan looked up slowly. Sir, we've got more incoming. Evan followed his gaze. The ridge line was filling with shapes. Not organic ones. Not natural flight patterns. These were structured arrivals. Coordinated descent vectors. Military formation behavior. Smokey's wings slowly unfolded. And for the first time, Evan noticed something different in the dragon's posture. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Like it had seen this before. Or worse. Like it had been waiting for it to find him. The first dropship broke the sky like a blade. Evan Cole saw it before the sensors finished confirming it. A dark, angular silhouette cutting through high atmosphere with no civilian transponder, no colonial registry beacon, and no friendly identification codes. It moved too smoothly for something that large, like it didn't care about air resistance at all. Then a second shape followed it. Then a third. Outpost R-17's warning system finally caught up. Multiple unidentified aerial units detected, the base AI announced. Armed configuration confirmed. The words echoed through the canyon speakers like they didn't belong there. Captain Evans stood frozen in the center of the impact zone, eyes tracking the sky. Private Logan Pierce had fully raised his weapon now. Sir, Logan said, voice tight, we are not equipped for this. Evan didn't answer immediately. His attention was locked on Smokey. The dragon hadn't moved. Not toward the tank. Not toward the incoming ships. It was watching everything at once, head shifting slightly between targets, as if assembling a mental map faster than any human system could. The tank behind it hummed again. The turret rotated, but not at Smokey this time. It rotated upward. Toward the incoming ships. Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. They're not targeting us, he said quietly. Logan glanced at him. What? Evan pointed. Look at the turret alignment. It's not locked on ground assets anymore. The tank speaker crackled again. Secondary objective detected. Then, after a pause. Hostile recovery interference classified. Logan frowned. Hostile to what? Evan didn't have an answer. Because the drop ships were now entering descent. Fast. Too fast. One of them deployed landing stabilizers midair, adjusting trajectory with precision that made Evan's military instincts uneasy. That level of control meant one thing. Not a strike team improvising. A coordinated retrieval unit. The canyon floor trembled as Smokey finally moved. Not aggressively. Not defensively. Purposefully. It stepped forward, placing itself between the tank and the open air above the base. Like a shield deciding where the battlefield would exist. Logan looked at Evan. It's protecting us. I don't think it knows what us means, Evan said. It's responding to something else. The first dropship hit landing position just outside the canyon rim. Dust exploded outward. The second landed behind it. The third hovered, scanning. Then a voice came through external speakers, crisp, filtered, mechanical. Entity confirmed. The canyon lights flickered as the system attempted to triangulate the source. Dragon Unit DR7 located. Evan felt Logan tense beside him. "They're calling it that designation again," Logan said. Evan nodded slowly. "That's not ours. That's older." Smokey growled. "Low. Controlled. Dangerous." The tank responded instantly, turret snapping into full lock position. But still? No firing. Just tracking. Waiting. Evan raised his voice toward the canyon air. "Identify yourselves." The speaker didn't respond to him. It responded to Smokey. "Return authority engaged." The words hit like a system override. Smokey's wings shifted slightly. Not fear. Not aggression. Recognition again. Like hearing a language it hadn't spoken in a long time. Logan whispered, "Sir, I don't like this." "Neither do I," Evan said. Then the third ship opened its underside bay. And something descended. Not a soldier. Not a drone. A containment frame. Large. Reinforced. Circular locking mechanisms glowing faint blue as it lowered toward the canyon floor. Evan's stomach dropped. "That's a retrieval cage," he said. Logan stared at it. "For what?" The tank answered. "Asset recovery unit deployed." Smokey reacted instantly. It spread its wings fully for the first time since arriving at R-17. The air pressure dropped. Dust lifted. The canyon itself seemed to tighten around the motion. Evan stepped back instinctively. "Smokey, wait." But the dragon wasn't listening in the way Evan meant. It was listening in a different way entirely. The containment frame touched down outside the canyon. And immediately began extending locking fields. Energy lines spread across the ground like a net searching for something it already knew the shape of. The tank rotated again. Now aligned with the frame. Not Smokey. Not the base. The system above them. Evan realized it at the same time Logan did. "They're not here for us," Logan said slowly. Evan finished it. "They're here for it." Smokey stepped forward again. This time, the canyon did not feel like a base. It felt like a trigger point. The drop ships adjusted their positions simultaneously. Perfect synchronization. Military precision. Then the voice returned. "Dragon Unit DR7, return to containment." Smokey answered. Not with sound that translated. But with a vibration that rolled through every metallic surface in the canyon. The tank shuddered. The transport carrier's lights flickered violently. Evan grabbed the edge of a support console to steady himself. Logan shouted over the noise, "Sir, what is it doing?" Evan stared at Smokey. And for the first time, understood the terrifying possibility forming in front of him. "I think," Evan said slowly, "it's deciding whether it ever belonged to them in the first place." Above them, the containment frame began to close its field. And Smokey stepped directly into its path. The containment field snapped on like a cage made of light. It didn't physically touch the ground, but the effect was unmistakable. The air itself tightened, as if the canyon had been placed inside a pressure lock designed for something far larger than anything human-built could comfortably classify. Captain Evan Cole felt it immediately in his teeth. Logan Pierce staggered a half-step back. "That's not a standard containment field." Evan didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Smokey. The dragon had stepped forward without hesitation. Now it stood inside the perimeter of the descending energy grid, wings partially spread, head lowered slightly, not in submission, not in aggression, but in evaluation. Like it was reading something invisible layered across reality itself. Above them, the three drop ships maintained perfect triangular positioning. No drift. No deviation. Machines behaving like they had done this exact procedure 100 times before. The canyon speakers crackled again. "Dragon Unit DR7, the system announced, return authority reasserted." Logan's voice was tight. "Sir, what authority?" Evan didn't take his eyes off Smokey. "Not ours." The tank below rotated slightly, turret aligning upward again, but not firing. Its systems hummed with restrained tension, like it was waiting for permission from something higher up the chain. Smokey exhaled. A low, vibrating sound rolled through the canyon floor. The containment field flickered for a fraction of a second. Just enough for Evan to notice. "Did you see that?" he asked sharply. Logan nodded. "It disrupted the field." "No," Evan said. "It responded to it." That made Logan go still. The containment frame descended another meter. Energy lines intensified, forming a geometric lattice around Smokey's position. The system was trying to define boundaries in three-dimensional space, locking coordinates, stabilizing the capture vector. But Smokey wasn't standing still anymore. Its head turned slowly upward toward the nearest drop ship. And for the first time since its arrival at R-17, it vocalized. Not a roar. Not a growl. A structured sequence of sound that made the canyon's communication array stutter. The base AI immediately flagged it. Unknown signal pattern detected. Then, language matching. Failed. Logan looked at Evan. It's trying to talk to them. Evan's jaw tightened. Or respond. The tank below emitted a sharp mechanical tone. Priority event escalation. Then, after a pause. Subject behavior, NON compliant. Smokey shifted its stance. And Evan finally understood something that made his stomach drop. This isn't first contact, he said quietly. Logan frowned. What? Evan pointed upward at the ships. Look at their formation. Their timing. Their classification system. He swallowed. They've done this before. Above them, the containment field tightened again. The energy lattice began to compress inward. Smokey responded instantly. Not with panic. With precision. It stepped forward exactly one pace. And the field stalled. Logan's eyes widened. It's resisting it. No, Evan said slowly. It's negotiating it. The canyon speakers crackled. Dragon Unit DR7, compliance required. Smokey tilted its head slightly. Then it did something neither Evan nor Logan expected. It looked at the tank. Not the ships. Not the containment field. The tank. And the tank responded. Its turret rotated, not toward Smokey, but toward the containment frame itself. Evan froze. Why is it targeting the retrieval system? Logan whispered, it's supposed to retrieve the dragon. Evan shook his head slightly. Not if it recognizes conflicting command layers. Smokey stepped again. The containment field flickered harder this time. One of the drop ships adjusted position instantly. Too fast. Too synchronized. Like a reflex. And Evan saw it then. They're not improvising, he said. Logan glanced at him. Sir. Evan pointed upward. This is protocol behavior. Automated doctrine response. He felt the weight of realization settle in. This isn't a squad, he said quietly. It's a system. Smokey's wings shifted. A controlled motion. Not defensive anymore. Intentional. Like it was deciding something important. The containment field began its final tightening cycle. Energy lines converged. Lock vectors stabilized. The system prepared for capture. The canyon lights flickered violently under the strain. And then, Smokey roared. Not loud. Not chaotic. Focused. The sound didn't echo. It aligned. Every metal surface in the canyon vibrated in response. The tank system sparked briefly. The transport carrier behind it powered up fully for the first time since landing. And the containment field stopped. Completely. Logan stared. It shut it down. Evan corrected him quietly. No. He pointed at Smokey. It told it to stop. Above them, the lead drop ship finally broke formation. A new voice came through the canyon speakers. This one wasn't procedural. It had weight. Dragon Unit DR7. A pause. Then. Subject has exhibited sentient command authorization behavior. Logan's voice dropped. That sounds like recognition. Evan nodded slowly. It is. The tank below shifted again. And this time, it moved forward. Not toward Smokey. Not toward the ships. But into a defensive position between Smokey and the containment field. Evan stared at it. It just changed alignment, he said. Logan swallowed. It's protecting the dragon. Evan corrected him again, softer this time. No. He watched Smokey. It's following it. Smokey took one final step forward. And the canyon, every system, every machine, every weapon present, responded at once. Not to the humans. Not to the ships. But to the dragon that had just taught them all one simple truth. It wasn't fetching objects anymore. It was retrieving control. And something far above the canyon had just realized it had lost its leash.